I almost started.
Right, at 6 o'clock, I'll call the meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of
America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the oath of office to myself, Maggie Bass, and Rick Seiler. So, what would you like us to do?
You just stand there.
Just right where we are? You're gonna do all of us at once, aren't you?
I suppose I can, unless you guys all want to do them individually.
Well,
We could do them, it don't matter.
All right, well, if you could all.
Kind of stand.
I,
I,
no, and state your names, I guess, since we're all doing them individually.
Rick Seiler,
Maggie Bass,
Do solemnly swear
do
solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will
that I will
support the Constitution of the United States
and the state of Minnesota,
and the state of Minnesota,
and faithfully discharge
and
And
faithfully discharge
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
as City Council member
as
City Council member
of the City of New Prague
of
of the city of New Prague
in the counties of Scott
in the counties of Scott
and LeSueur
and LeSueur
and the state of Minnesota
and the state of Minnesota
to the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my judgment and ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the regular agenda.
So moved.
There's been a motion by Rick. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And there's a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next item is the consent agenda. Did anybody have any questions on that?
I did on the claims for payment, maybe just refresh my memory of the civic systems for 74,500. Is that software?
That's our new software that we'll be working on and implementing in 2023. So that's one of two payments, so half of the payment.
Okay, great, thanks. It looked familiar, but I just wanted to be sure. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Otherwise, I'd take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved?
Second.
There's been a motion by Maggie, seconded by Sean. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, the next item up is the resolution recognizing retiring Police Chief James Garais, and I'll offer this resolution. The City of New Prague Resolution Number 23-01-09-01, recognizing James A. Garais. It's Elford, right? So whereas James A. Garais has faithfully served the City of New Prague in the positions of Police Officer, Patrol Sergeant, and Police Chief for the City of New Prague from October 20th, 1987 to December 31st, 2022. And whereas he has always effectively, conscientiously, and professionally represented the City of New Prague in a distinguished fashion, and whereas his efforts have been largely responsible for the excellent reputation, growth, and overall well-being of the City of New Prague, and whereas all the citizens of the City of New Prague have been the beneficiary of his efforts, talents, and abilities for the past 35 years. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of New Prague, Minnesota, that this community and City Council express and record their esteem and high appreciation of his character, dedication, and contributions, which have earned him the respect and friendship of all who have had the pleasure of working with him. And be it further resolved that this City Council extends best wishes to Jim for many years of good health and happiness in his retirement. Adopted by the City Council of the City of New Prague on the 9th day of January, 2023. And I'll take a second on that.
Second.
All in favor, say
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you, Jim.
It's been an honor working with you professionally and elected. And okay. Thanks. So there's that. Then we have a key to the city.
And you'll change the lock tomorrow?
Actually, when I got off the council the first time, I tried it, it doesn't work. So I'm sure this one will either. So. Congratulations.
Been an honor to serve with the city, and I appreciate everything the city has done. It's been an honor to serve with men and women in blue that have come through the department also. We should do a picture with everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't look right.
Long as they ain't after me.
Feel pretty safe.
Yeah, very.
Candy wants to get one too.
I'll get Patrick's.
Okay.
Gallery over here.
Can I pick on these cops out there?
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Actually, they left the Romies.
All right, the next resolution I'm going to offer is resolution recognizing Romy Sawyer. So the City of New Prague Resolution number 23-01-09-02 recognizing Romy Sawyer. Whereas Romy Sawyer has been involved with the New Prague Men's Slow Pitch Softball League for over 49 years, with 42 years as an umpire, including umpiring in shorts when it was snowing outside. 40 years as a men's league player and 10 years as a player in the couples league. And whereas he was the league director for the New Prague's Men's Slow Pitch Softball League for 35 years while working with Dave Smishik and Leroy Wagner. And whereas during his time playing, umpiring, serving as men's league director, he averaged about 12 hours per week during each season at the fields in Memorial Park. And whereas he has always effectively, conscientiously, and professionally represented the City of New Prague in the Men's Slow Pitch Softball League in a distinguished fashion, and whereas his efforts were largely responsible for the excellent success of the New Prague Men's Slow Pitch Softball League, and whereas all the participants in the New Prague's Men's Slow Pitch Softball League have been the beneficiary of his efforts, talents, and abilities for the past 42 plus years. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of New Prague, Minnesota, that this community and the City Council express and record their esteem and high appreciation of his character, dedication, and contributions, which have earned him the respect and friendship of all who have had the pleasure of working with him. And be it further resolved that this City Council extend best wishes to Romy for many years of good health and happiness in his future endeavors. Adopted by the City Council of the City of New Prague on the 9th day of January 2023. Do I have a second?
So moved.
Sean made the second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So with that, I'll present this to Romy.
Oh, and you and your sister would come in and let that all know.
Well, yeah, but then I helped them. Then I helped you with this. sure these people came for Sandy's benefit.
Sandy, everyone else I have. That's awesome, totally awesome. Congratulations. Appreciate it. Appreciate it.
You're more than welcome to stay for the rest of this interesting meeting. Or you can leave. You're welcome, thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Take your balloons and go home.
I'll hand these out real quick. These are the, here, sign your.
Oh, sure.
Congrats, Jim. That way you can't claim you didn't do it.
Okay, the next item, do we have a city engineer project update? No. Do we have a city engineer project update?
The only update would be that you guys are all invited to, well, obviously Dwayne will be there for sure. Wednesday, open house. The
What day?
The 2023 open house for this year's rework project. It will be this Wednesday at 6 o'clock. So
Okay.
obviously I'll see you there, Dwayne. You have to be there. So,
Didn't know that.
you know, okay, well, the invites were all sent out a couple weeks
Oh,
ago.
no, I saw the invite.
Oh,
but-
okay. I'm just saying you have to be there. It's part of your project is all I'm getting at.
Oh,
And it's
okay.
gonna be right here, and what date?
We'll be right up here on this Wednesday, 6 o'clock.
Okay. The facility study update from Wold Architects. Good evening.
Cleared the room out, that's,
Yeah, that's, you probably thought, what's going on tonight?
I know, I was hoping that they weren't all here for my presentation tonight.
They would've brought pillows, so.
Oh, it's gonna be one of those, huh? All right, that come up on your guys' screen there?
Not yet. Working on it.
No.
There we go.
All right. Any preamble, or should I just jump right in there, Josh?
Let's just rock and roll.
All right. So tonight we are here to visit with council again on kind of the progress on the facility study. It's been a while since we met with council and kind of went over some of the preliminary findings, kind of the condition of the facilities and stuff like that. And so what we have to talk about tonight is just kind of a quick review of kind of where we're at as far as long-range projections, not only for staffing, but also for what that really relates to as far as space. Want to dig a little bit further into some of the options that we had talked about before, see if there's any additional feedback related to that. But we're really getting to the point in the project where we need to start thinking about what the recommendations might be and what some of those cost implications are, because certainly it's great to come up with all of these wonderful ideas, but we do need to talk a little bit about kind of budget and phasing, and it would be great to get some feedback on that tonight as well, and then any next steps as far as whether there's some additional stuff we should be looking at or additional staff input that we should be getting for this. So as kind of a quick reminder, we did go through a number of projection analysis for the different departments as we look at city departments, for the police department, for the fire department, and also for some of our public utilities buildings as well. And the slide that we have for you today really kind of talks about what the utilization is today. In other words, what kind of space are we using today? What are we thinking about as far as space needs, like immediate needs coming up in the next couple of years? 2025 was our kind of our short-term immediate projections, and then looking at midterm projections from 2035 to long-term projections out to 2045. And so it's a fairly long look at where we should be thinking about as far as providing services long-term. And so today, looking at City Hall, we are roughly utilizing about 24,000 square feet. That includes the Public Works Parks Garage that is down at the far end. It includes all of our police staff space and garage space and all of the city departments, including the space that we have up here on this floor. And so as we look out to 2025, there is certainly some additional staffing coming along, but much of the need is really related to right-sizing some of the spaces that we have, much of it in the police side of things. For those that have walked through that space, if you haven't, I would encourage walking through it. It is at what we would consider end of life, and we should be considering updating those facilities. But also one of the things that we have been looking at is kind of utilization within our administration and finance and engineering and planning and zoning within the city office itself. So some recent work has been done to kind of as a stopgap to try to alleviate some staffing pressures in here, but there certainly is some space issues as it relates to some of those departments as well. We think that our public works and electric utility departments are in pretty good shape as far as staffing and space, at least for the short term. Long term, there is some additional need for some storage, some staff spaces and stuff like that, but not a significant amount of space. Much of the work related to those facilities will be in just long-term maintenance and reinvestment to make sure that those buildings continue to serve well into the future. And so as we look at some of the recommendations, what we started to do was to talk about kind of that short-term, midterm, and long-term. And so short-term, we came up with 3-4 different scenarios to kind of look at different ways to utilize space and figure out how we might be able to impact change. And the first scenario that we came up with really is for the short term, City Hall kind of stays as is. Maybe there's some reinvestment related to existing facilities and some of that type of stuff. Yes, sir.
Do you prefer that we ask questions at the end, or can we?
It's up to you. If there's something pertinent to what I'm talking about at that time that would benefit from answering the question, then I'd be happy to.
Oh, you're putting me on the spot then, so my question has to be worthy of it. No, I'm just trying to go back to the previous presentation, just trying to make sure I understand the context of it.
Yep.
So the numbers and the grids and all of that. My understanding of the numbers didn't show any availability in any building. So is that just because of the way we're showing the numbers, or is it literally we don't have any availability in any building?
I would say the latter. There's just
Okay.
very little, if any, availability. I think one of the big things, at least on the police side, is that there really is no more room in that building for additional staff. You've done some minor changes in this building by moving the administrator and the community development director upstairs here, but that's only allowed it to right-size some of the staffing stuff that was recently done in those areas. And so there really isn't any additional space to add more staff, either in the City Hall side of things or the police side of things. I think there's been some recent changes over at some of the other buildings to allow for current staffing, but some movement of some people, and we'll talk about that a little bit as we go through the options. Moving some of the folks out of those other buildings will alleviate some of the long-term space needs for staff at those buildings as well.
Yeah, the reason I ask is obviously with the new electrical garage addition, I would have assumed there'd be some availability for growth for them, at least for the next 5 years.
Correct. And beyond, to be honest with you.
The other context question I was just trying to understand on the park space that doesn't show an immediate need, but shows a need in 2035, and I'm understanding that to be it's based on the assumption that the police works would increase and therefore the park should use up the existing space? Is that why the park space doesn't show any need until the year 2035?
It was just a conversation that the group had related to the parks garage, really, that's on this site here, really just needs to be rebuilt. And so that would, you know, it's kind of one of those stopgaps until you can, and certainly that's the kind of feedback that we'd like to get, is when is the right time to do that? There's been a lot of conversation related to replacement of that park storage area that's on this building. It's not likely it would be a good use of dollars to fix and repair that area, and so certainly as an interim, if, let's say, and the conclusion is that we need to build some police space somewhere, there would be some space in this building, but as we kind of go through the options, there's kind of a domino effect as you start to look at where people go and some of that type of stuff. And I can address that a little bit as we go through the
Okay,
options.
yeah, our capital plan already has it
Yep,
in the next couple of years, but the need isn't shown until 2035, so that it just is incongruent there.
yeah,
Okay, thank you.
yep. And so if we kind of continue down the line of what we could do in the short term, we think that at least initially short term, we should really think about investing in police. That's kind of the first major need for the city. And so what we're recommending is that the city consider looking at a new police facility in that short term, which is completed in 2025. That would give you a little bit of relief for how things are at this building, at least initially. We don't see there's much of a need for work at Public Works, Electric Garage, and Power Plant. To your point, council member, related to the Parks Garage, we are recommending in the short term to build an addition onto the existing Public Works building for that Parks Garage, similar to what you recently did for the electric utility. So that would take care of that capital improvement plan item that is in there. What that would do then is set this building up for future work, right? And move some people out of here, take off that old Parks Garage, and we'll see some of that in some of the solution diagrams. Midterm would be to renovate the city hall, so you get police out of here, you do the Parks Garage, you do the demolition of that, and then you do extensive remodeling of this building to allow for city offices to grow and to kind of reorganize this building in a way that eliminates some of the issues that you have in here with access to this level and some of the space issues within the departments. At some point, you know, once we do the renovation in this building here, we would have some room for some additional office space in this building, which means we could move some of the leadership staff from the Public Works and from the electric utility into this building, which would then free up space in those buildings for additional staffing to come on board. The golf course buildings is a bit of an enigma as far as what we want to do with that, and that's certainly a place where we could get some feedback. It is not in the greatest of shape, and the way that it's laid out isn't great as you look at customer service. And so perhaps other conversations around facilities would lead us to a different solution for that golf course building, but at some point we need to consider either replacing that building or doing something different with the golf course building. And then long-term, depending upon service delivery and growth in the city, there's likely some work that needs to be done to fire, and that might be you know, some sort of a transition to a different type of service delivery model that may require some sleeping space in that building or an addition for additional apparatus, but we don't see that need until we get out into that long-term scenario there. So one of the things is that the group kind of came up with was to look at what might be a good solution for police starting out, and one of the sites that we looked at is the fire site. The thought was that there's some good synergies with our fire operations, that we could create a public safety facility out there and do an addition to that building to accommodate the police department. The site is large enough, so we did a little test fit this isn't intended to be a final solution, but we looked at a couple of ways to add on to the building that would preserve the current usage of the building, but still allow for some flexibility, say if you needed to add another apparatus bay to that building or do some renovation to the building in the future. And so this would assume a building addition to the south. We would probably take off that old garage building on there. We have left it on here for now because we haven't had enough design discussion on site circulation to make that decision. But this is just really to show that it'll work on that site. It's a good location for it, and we might find some sharing opportunities within that building with our police department being on that site. To address the issue related to parks and their storage and needs, we're suggesting that an addition onto the existing Public Works building, not unlike what you just done recently for the electric garage, would be a good solution for the parks facility based on conversations. They need to roughly double in size related to storage and their needs that they identified, and a 14,000 square foot addition to that site would be very similar in size and scale to what you've done already. It would be of similar construction to the existing building. When looking at the City Hall site, what we believe here is that if you pull off the Parks garage, there is enough square footage in this building to accommodate the needs for the city. The biggest challenge for this building is the space out here. There is a significant level changes between the various areas there that it may be beneficial to actually consider demolishing and reconstructing more of it. But at this point in time, we're suggesting that you could do an extensive renovation of that building, removing the Parks garage and then moving some of the departments into where the police operations are. And again, there is a level change, so we would have to deal with ramps, potentially an elevator and that type of stuff. So one of the conversations that we've had, and it certainly would be doable, would be to preserve this historic older part of the building and then just kind of start over as you go in that direction. That is certainly another option for this building, but that's not one that we've explored cost-wise on it right now. We were mainly looking to see if there was adequate square footage and what might be a good operational change to this building that would include moving the council chambers down to the first floor, create more of a public-friendly first floor where we would have some better accessibility on that level, have a better lobby experience as people come into the building, have a single point of contact for the public for community development and for administration and finance, and then repurpose this level for a large training room. So obviously the council chambers is large enough to accommodate that. Interestingly enough, we still have enough room on this floor where we could create a break room up here, kind of expand that back to what it used to be before, and this would be a good location for kind of larger staff development type stuff or larger meetings and that type of stuff. And that would then kind of create some additional meeting room space in this building, which is really needed. Certainly the council chambers is a large space and it could also be used for that, but there is a significant lack of meeting space in this building today. And then for our power plant, we really don't see any need for additions onto that building. I think what we found was that from a staffing perspective, if we could move some of the leadership positions, as I said, into this building in the future, that would free up some space on the administration side. The building is in good condition. It's been well maintained by the utilities, so we don't really have much related to that. So one of the things that we spent some time with the committee is talking about budget and cost, which is a big challenge for a lot of people these days, mainly because there's been a significant amount of construction inflation over the last couple of years. If you've been tracking what's been going on, much of it's related to supply chain, a lot of it's related to labor issues. We do see that there's going to be a slowdown coming in this at least in 23, maybe into 24. That'll have an impact on cost, but crystal balls being what they are, you know, right now we're still seeing most of our construction partners are projecting continued increases in construction inflation going into 23. And so what we had experienced over the last couple of years was double-digit construction inflation numbers in that 10 to 12%, coming out of the pandemic and even into the last couple of years. Most projects struggle still with material deliveries, construction schedules that were 8 months long are now over a year, just because of some of those issues. And all of that adds to some of the difficulties that we're having in putting together budgets for our clients. So we are suggesting a fairly conservative approach to budgeting at this time. We did go back and kind of look at similar facilities that were both new construction and renovation and projected those costs from the time that they were built to what they might be today. And you can see in that furthest column that says construction cost with inflation, that those numbers for new construction range from, the low or the upper 300s to low $400 a square foot for public safety and offices. Renovations, depending upon the scope of renovation, like if we're considering replacement of mechanical systems, doing major remodeling, we would think that something in that mid 200s would probably be a good renovation cost. And then for our public works facilities, we're seeing anywhere from $150 to $200 a square foot, depending upon the type of space, whether it's office space or heated storage space and stuff like that. So what we determined as a group is that we should probably be conservative as we go into the budgeting phase of this, and we are recommending at this point for new construction for public safety at $450 a square foot for construction. We do need to account for the project costs, which would be everything that's not construction, which would be furniture and equipment, technology, contingencies, fees for your design professionals and others. And so that typically runs in that 1.3 to 1.32. And so for budgeting purposes, we have suggested that the $450 a square foot get multiplied by that 32% project cost factor, netting out to that $600 a square foot total project cost. $265 for public works, $355 for major renovations, and $200 a square foot for public works if we're doing renovation to those buildings. So certainly a lot of the discussion is when to do these things, and so part of the exercise would be to look at which year you would be doing the work in and try to figure out what the midpoint of construction would be at that time. And so that was kind of the exercise that we did with the committee. And so if you go back to some of these scenarios, so that first scenario that I had presented suggested that a short-term police facility, long-term or midterm, some renovations to this facility, looking at kind of that short-term, utilizing some of those costs that we had come up with. We're looking at roughly about 24,600 square feet of need for the police department, utilizing that $600 a square foot. The math would suggest a $14.75 million for the police facility. We did put in there's going to be some interior renovation connection stuff between the two buildings, so we have $100,000 in there for that. The Public Works Garage Edition, we did kind of talk a little bit with the group as far as what you guys spent for the current one that's out there, and the number that we have in here is comparable to that with some inflation on that, so about $3.7 million for the Public Works Edition for about 14,000 square feet, gives you about $18.5 million for that scenario that we talked about for that short-term recommendations. As you look further out into the future, the numbers become a little bit more difficult to track. So if you go out to 2035, allowing for about 4 to 5% of inflation for construction inflation, you could be looking at about $11.5 million for renovating City Hall, about another 700 and some $1,000 for renovations to public works and utilities. And I took a swag at the clubhouse, thinking 8,000 square feet is similar to what they have, which would allow for the pro shop, some meeting space, kitchen dining type stuff, which was where that 8,000 square feet. So you could do something different, obviously, with that, but that'd be about $7 million, giving you about $21 million for that midterm recommendation. And then long-term, about $5 million to do additions and renovation to the fire station out in 2045. Just to kind of give you an idea on that. One of the things that the group also talked about was it would make a little bit of sense to start back renovating this building once police moves out. So instead of leaving this space and just having people move into it and then having people move out of it when you do the renovation, would it make more sense to do the renovation for City Hall right after the police department moves out of this building? And so just kind of continuing right after that, and that would move the timeline of that up a little bit. And so that 1B scenario really looks a little bit different. The $18.5 million stays the same, but the renovations to City Hall would be in 2026 versus 2035. And so you alleviate a lot of that inflationary stuff to go out to 2035. Might make a little bit more sense, so that budget for renovating City Hall would change to about $7 million to do that if you were to do that in 2026 versus out in 2025. And then similarly, your point of you do less work in 2035, that number would come down to $7.5 million. The long term for the fire station would stay the same. So the group did also talk about a couple other scenarios. The next scenario would be, well, what if we just build a new City Hall public safety facility or police facility on a new site someplace and just start over again. Midterm, again, would just be those renovations to public works, and then long-term fire. So we did look at generically what a couple of solutions might look like, whether it's a combined facility for City Hall and police on the same site, or as to whether or not you would split the two of them apart. Like, say you decided that you really liked the idea of putting the police department on the fire site, a standalone City Hall site. And this was just really to kind of look at how much land should you be looking for if you were to start that conversation. The numbers for new construction for a 43,000 square foot combined facility would be roughly about 26 million. And then again, that same addition for public works at 3.7 million puts that short-term scenario 2 recommendation at about $29.5 million. That midterm again is similar at about 8.5 million, and then the same long-term recommendation for fire. And then the last scenario that the group talked about, which is let's do nothing right now other than reinvest in our facilities. It's going to take a while to get some of this stuff moving forward. There is some deferred maintenance that we had talked about at one of our meetings that you should really be considering for this building, but really still look at doing that Parks Garage and demolishing that building off of this site. Midterm would do the new City Hall police facility, repurpose or get rid of this building, and then do the renovations at Public Works, etc. So we had done some cost estimating on some of the deferred maintenance work. This would include roof replacements, some tuck pointing of the brick on the outside of the building to deal with some of the water intrusion stuff, replace the windows, and then replace some interior finishes, update and replace the mechanical systems in the building, and then swap out some lighting for more energy efficient lighting, and some fire alarm work really gets us to about 1.8 million. Kind of deferred maintenance that's backlogged at this building, and then the 3.7 million for the Public Works garage gives you about 5.6 million for that short term. Because we're waiting on stuff, that inflation kicks in, so That number gets to be a little bit larger at about 59 million to do all of this work in 2035. And then again, the long-term recommendations around. So lots of numbers, lots of budgets there. Certainly there are variations of all of this stuff, but kind of the generalized idea is that there is some facility needs, most prominently with the police department, that tend to align with a short-term recommendation. And then after that, City Hall really could use some help. And so how you go about doing that would be great to get some feedback on. We can certainly go back and run some different scenarios if folks have some different ideas on it, but we've been back and forth with staff on this a number of times to kind of think through some of that stuff. So tonight was really about getting some feedback on some of the stuff and looking to kind of update and refine some of this as we move forward. So, questions? Additional questions?
A lot of money. I think it would be, I feel like I don't have all the I almost want to take a field trip around to where you guys can show where there's water damage coming in and this needs to be tuck pointed. I know that the police area is a nightmare, but I haven't toured it in probably 8 years, so I don't know if they've changed
Take it
anything.
from me.
Yeah, so,
It's a nightmare.
but I think that'd be real helpful if the council could go around and you guys can individually point out things, because obviously, it'd be great if we had a pot of gold and we can just do it all, but that isn't really the case. So my feeling is that we're gonna have to kind of piecemeal it a little bit. I don't like fighting the inflationary pressures any more than anybody else does, but that's really kind of a fact of life. And to be honest, like even to what you spoke of earlier, construction costs could go down in the next few years. There could be a big downturn and, and we could save some money there if we stomp the brakes a little bit and take a wait and see approach a little bit. But I do know that there is some, especially with the police department, some real needs there. But I'd really like to get a tour of some of the other ones if that's possible. I'm just, or even if I was able to sit in on that meeting when city staff was giving you, hey, this, we need a new fire truck bay here and we need tuck pointing here because I have water dripping on my desk. And I thought we alleviated some of the problem downstairs now with moving 2 people up here. But maybe that was just a Band-Aid. I don't know, But I was curious to look at, and one of the questions that I have is looking at how the staff increases over those to 2035, let's say. We go from 1 administrator to 4 administrators. I'd like to hear what the long-term proposal of that is. So now we need office space for 3 additional people in that department. I always try to tie population with staff needs, because that is our out of control thing on our budget is the benefits and the staff that we really have to get a hold of, because that eats up a majority of our increase every year. So I'm just kind of curious on the philosophy on that part too, and we don't have to discuss this tonight or whatever, but
I can give you some anecdotal feedback on some of that, and we can get you the more detailed.
Yeah.
There is a more detailed space program that identifies what each of those potential staff positions are. I think the numbers that you see in the administration looks at moving some other people into this building, on that side of it. So it would be a little bit more clear if we shared the entire detailed program with the council, and we can certainly do that, which would give you that. There's also a facility assessment report that has some of those graphics that you're talking about, with some of the brick issues and some of the water issues and some of that we could also share as well.
okay.
And I know, Sean, speaking specifically to that, part of this was we kind of sat down with them and said, okay, where do you see yourselves in 10 years, in 20 years? And so administration specifically, since I was the one that kind of worked on that includes the public works director and the utilities general manager moving under one roof. So that gets us to 3.
Okay.
And then there has been talk, I know utilities have talked about it, downstairs has been talked about, Having one more body that's able to just help with administrative work, cause there's so much of it, so we figured maybe in 10 years, we'd be to that point where, okay, we bring on like a administrative assistant that's just kind of helping everybody out to get through stuff. And so
I
we
see.
just estimated maybe one more person added to those three. And so all the departments ended up doing exercises like that, just trying to guess, do we potentially see the need for another person, just so that way, when they're running their numbers for 10 years and 20 years, they're taking that into account.
Sure, okay. And I just wanted to get a little bit better feeling for it, you know, I mean, if our population goes from 85 to 12,000, how much more work does that mean? I don't know, cause I don't sit in your office, but yeah.
Yep.
Okay,
And there are some population projections that we tried to keep a fairly conservative approach on, which also, you know, allows for some discussion related to public safety staffing and some of that type of stuff. So some of those assumptions are in there as well, and that might be helpful as well.
okay.
A couple comments. The population growth, I have no better estimate than what's provided in there, but I do have to kind of go through the arithmetic and wonder, at least for the next 5 years in that thing, if we really even have the lots available to try to make a 6% growth in 5 years, because that would mean probably 30 to 40 lots a year, and we didn't hit that this year, and you know, some of those things might take off again, but we just don't have the inventory to, in my mind, to maybe get there in the first 5 years. What, I'm not advocating for this, but I'm just trying to talk about the issue. In the numbers, it appears that the park and the police, really, the big space needs are either storage or garage related. And so I'm aware that different cities have their fleets and things off-site from an administration. But is that, can you talk about whether that's a good idea, bad idea, or the garage and storage is a lower cost of building typically? So is there economies to be looking into that situation where you either create a larger area for police storage and I realize there's other issues with some of their particular needs you can't move. Police would have to be close to the administrative part of it, but certainly the storage of vehicles and equipment and things like that, logically would seem to be a fit to put into a designated building by themselves or connected to the other area. And like I said, I'm not advocating this, but I think it's a big enough issue that kind of jumps out in the numbers. How do you talk about that?
In a more detailed design process, we would have a conversation as to the size of that storage space in more detail related to its construction type, because there are different ways that you can build garages that have different price points. During the planning stages of it, we try to take a generalized average of what these types of facilities cost. We have done multiple public safety buildings that use, you know, precast construction versus brick and block construction. And so there's a value-based conversation that we would have as you want to try to refine those costs a little bit closer. I would advocate for your police fleet being connected to the overall police administration side of things. There's synergies related to how they deploy out, when they do shift changes, and how they operate that benefits from being more connected. And so much of the square footage related to the garage space is just getting the fleet into a covered space that's tempered so that the equipment is protected and in close proximity to where the police are going to respond, or the police are going to change over and that type of stuff. The other piece of the storage for police is on the evidence side of things. If you haven't seen it, I would encourage you to go look at it. How the evidence is being stored in police right now is less than ideal and is hazardous in that particular area. We would want to change that in a significant way to make sure we have proper chain of custody on the evidence as it comes through the process, and that you have isolated spaces for when they bring in drug evidence and stuff like that, which isn't available in there right now. So much of the space issues that you have on the police side are really getting the police department to best practices for operations. And so with that, obviously comes square footage to kind of solve some of those needs. Certainly a more detailed design process would vet out the final total square footages of that, but that's kind of where police is right now, and it is really something that should be focused on.
The evidence issue is, I thought we addressed that. We spent $50,000 on that like 7 or 8 years ago. Is that not up to speed or up to status quo or whatever the
I
rate?
believe that was some ventilation work for that, but I'm talking about actually separated storage areas for.
Yeah, no, I remember that discussion. What was that, Ken? 7 or 8 years ago, we talked about the chain of evidence. And we had to secure it, and I thought we remodeled. We did something in that police area. Do you recall, Tim, maybe? But it was pretty significant. I know that we did some work down there.
I know that we did, add some secured lockers down there.
Okay.
In the past, what was there when I started here was old school lockers in a modified dog kennel, and there was a padlock on it, which just isn't compliant with state statute. So we do have a secured evidence locker. It's a way, so only one person has, you put your evidence in, it gets locked, and then only one person has, or people that have evidence techs have access to it from the other side. So we put those in. I don't know that it was to the degree of $50,000. I can't.
Well, it could have been some ventilation
Yeah.
work too. I just know there was,
And,
that
and
was
some
part of the issue.
ventilation. Some of the issues that we run into are where do we process this evidence? You know, you talk about fentanyl and carfentanil now. It's a huge thing, and we're doing that in the same spaces that we're cleaning our guns and where our squad cars are, and so there's those concerns that are just the space needed to, you know, perform the operations of a daily, on our daily routine and tasks that we need to get done. We just don't have the space to do those things right now.
I got a couple for you. Inflation, when you figure that in, I mean, like, right now, didn't it like hyperinflate everything over the last 2-3 years?
Yes.
So how would you calculate what the inflation rate's gonna be in 2035?
So what we looked at was some historical information from various contractors like Mortensen and others, as far because they're tracking data even more than what we are. There's also some resources with the state of Minnesota from their management and budget office that they publish on an annual basis as far as what they recommend for inflation. Most of the reports that we've seen tend to stay in that double-digit numbers for the last couple of years. Some of those reports are just recently coming out that suggests that there's going to be some additional construction inflation in the first quarter of 23, but we could see some lessening of that as, you know, the economy stabilizes, I guess might be a word that you might use for that. So I don't think we're gonna see it continuing on the same trajectory that it is right now. And so where I tried to take a kind of a median look at that, where we would have some higher construction inflation, like about 8%, 6 to 8% in 23, but it would go back to the normal 4 to 5% that is pretty typical for construction inflation in our industry. So as you look at some of those further out numbers, that assumes a 4.5% annualized inflation for construction. Typically, construction inflation runs at a point or two higher than consumer inflation. So if consumer inflation is at like 2.9%, you might expect construction inflation to be anywhere from 4.5 to 4.8%. So that's usually a good rule of thumb that we see, so.
And when you do calculate this, you know, or I see the scenario 1B for short term for 2025.
Yep.
Came to 18.5. So I'm just wondering, is there bonding available when you're, well, state bonding, is there any state bonding available for this?
That would be a good question for your legislators. There certainly is a number of our clients that have approached their legislators about getting some bonding monies to help with projects. Certainly it's something worth exploring. With it comes some strings, as you might, be aware. There's requirements related to sustainability and prevailing wage that comes with state money, but, all of those can be factored in if you're successful in getting help from the state for that. We have a number of clients that have gotten state grants for facilities like these, so.
Thank you.
I think I understood you to say that the police parks garage is basically past its useful life, and your recommendation would be to eventually or soon enough tear it down.
Yes.
And then, is there any either overhead or building efficiencies, material ones that we would gain anywhere in any of these scenarios, or is there any cost savings that we would realize by taking one scenario over the other, or doing this or that, or are there meaningful things we should be considering?
Anytime that you can combine efforts, whether it's a combined facility like what we were talking about for City Hall and police, there are some sharing opportunities that may reduce the square footage that we haven't really accounted for yet, because until we know what direction we're going to go, it's hard for us to predict where we might save some square footage. But certainly in some of those support spaces, there would be opportunities for savings. There certainly in some of the engineered systems for mechanical, plumbing, and electrical. We think certainly adding on to the fire department might also give you some opportunities to utilize some space in the fire department as shared, whether it's training space and some of that type of stuff. So I could see if you were to say, okay, this is what we want to do, we would want to dig a little bit deeper into some of those scenarios to see where some of those efficiencies are. And then there's the order of magnitude piece of it. The larger the project, the more your construction overhead costs come down and stuff like that, so.
And then talking about this building specifically, because kind of getting at that same point, if we were to build a new one, then we still have this one. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of efficiencies to gain in that part of it. But I'm trying to wrestle with myself. It's been discussed years ago already about building a new City Hall building. And it's never gotten traction, it seems. So I'm wondering what the merits of keeping this building and is remodeling it, refurbishing it, seem like a prudent thing to do?
It's a tough question. There's always value in an old building. You have some limitations on this building because of the level changes in here. It would take a significant amount of work, but the location of the building is great. The services it provides in this area is great. So you have to kind of weigh those value-based things around what the cost is to renovate versus building new. There is an adage that says if you build it new, you can build it the way that you want it in the most efficient way that you can, versus trying to retrofit an old building that may not be laid out in a way or have the ability to be modified in a way, the most efficient way. So there's some give or take between new construction versus renovation that could push you in a particular direction. So you'd have to decide, is this location in this building worth continuing on with? And some of the feedback that we've gotten is that this area out here probably doesn't have as much value as perhaps the space here.
So there was no consensus reached about, well, we need a new City Hall building. You didn't get that feeling.
So I will say, Bruce, as we talked about it, we all went into it being like, we need a new City Hall. And then we started talking about kind of these options and looking at them. And I know myself, I think at least one of their staff members said the same thing, is, maybe renovation could work. Like it's probably going to be a slightly lower cost. Is it the value worth it? I know personally, coming from a city planning background, the thought of this 100-year-old side of this building, I like the old historic preservation opportunity is there. Everything on that side of that wall right there doesn't really hold much value in terms of historic preservation, but I think a lot of it would be looking at as John said, looking at the location of this building and does the value of the 100-year-old structure itself weigh some merit in whether you want to try to keep this building or not when you start looking at ultimate options.
Well, even working on that corner and doing the parapet up there, I mean, the residents made it pretty clear they don't wanna change the look of this building. So I don't know how much of a wrestling match that would actually be, but.
Yeah, so I think the idea would be if you kept this building to basically do some serious historic preservation to it and try to bring it all up to new standards, I guess, while maintaining its historic character, and then doing all your new construction from that wall that way. So that way you maintain the old while still getting kind of the new, like a combination of the two, really.
And then aesthetically, you would blend that in anyway. It wouldn't be like, like the electric where you put the bunch of precast up. It's not gonna look like that. It'll look more like this older building.
Yeah, you would make some decisions about how you would want to present yourself in the downtown area and.
But then if, let's say we would go from that wall that way, we could bring those levels up to.
Correct. It's one of the reasons why we were considering that, and also the idea that if you build that area new, you have a lot of options for how you lay it out, what exactly that you do in that
You wouldn't
area.
be constrained to the footprint.
Yeah, and we have a lot of clients that value their historic downtown area and have done a lot of reinvestment in buildings. And as the administrator has said, you can do exterior tuck pointing, new windows, and still maintain the character of the building and bring it up to current construction standards. It's just a decision you have to make that's of value to do that.
Is the police building at this site either rebuilt on this site and renovating the city hall one of the options?
It's not. I don't believe there's enough square footage of land available here to do that without impacting parking and other things around the site.
Even taking down the buildings?
Correct.
Yeah. What about going across the street?
We have not gone outside of the footprint of this site.
Whatever happened with the creamery site when we purchased the old creamery site, and we had talked about a new city hall, a new police department there, and then putting senior living up on top of it. And somebody even at that time brought up a post office back then.
Yeah, so I know we did, and that's kind of where I think it was option 2 that talked about that like anything new build, whether it's city hall by itself or city hall police station.
Would be there.
May fit, that would be an excellent location because it would be close for it. I know, at least internally, we've kind of talked about what would it look like to have, say, senior living above. And I think that'd be something we'd really want to explore because you do have that, I think there's potential synergies, but I think there's also potential challenges that you may have to face. I don't know if there's been other facilities that have looked into it. I don't know if I would recommend one way or the other, but I think it would definitely create unforeseen challenges by whether it's senior or any other living facilities on the same location. If for some reason there was some reason you had to lock down the facility and that sort of thing.
Well, I thought the way the discussion was going back then was that perhaps the county could get involved too and help, spread out some of those costs for any new build.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an option, but we'd want to definitely dig into it further to see if that's really a direction we'd want to go.
I mean, didn't we talk about a holding pond and a little path around it just to clean up that area?
Yeah, I would say if we decided to go a route of building a new facility over there, there may also be enough space to kind of clean it up and create a small park since we don't really have a park in this area anyway.
Now, are you talking, when you talk about an addition to the firehouse, are you also talking about removing the ambulance bay? Or are you going to
Not at this time.
include that in there?
If you looked at the options, they were both on there because we weren't quite
Yeah,
sure what that was going to look like.
that
So
I
there's
get.
one picture with the ambulance bays on there and one with them off.
So, there's existing EMS, okay.
So it'll work either way on the site. It's just what we wanted to do was to allow for the EMS to develop in whatever way it needed to. So
Okay.
Well, we certainly have a
lots
lot of
to,
information to
Think about
talk through, yes.
It was very valuable, though. I sure do it was a lot better than last time, so we got it right in front of us and the numbers mean everything.
And so certainly, take some time to digest this. I would be happy to come back and talk again about some of the stuff after folks have had a chance to digest the information. I'll work with the administrator to send out some of the detail, that kind of the behind the scenes stuff that it's just really hard to go through line by line in a program at an update like this. But if for those that want to see that detail, the detail exists and we'll send it out. And then if you have any questions on that or we need to get back together, we would be happy to do that.
Yeah, maybe we can suggest a working session, just solely devoted to.
Yeah, that would be great.
Do you feel we need to wait to talk to our financial advisor to get an idea what's feasible as far as what's available over the next, what can we afford?
That would be one of the next logical steps is.
So we should wait for a little bit before we start looking at that?
No, the order of magnitude of the costs are there regardless of which final direction you go. So typically your financial counsel would be able to give you a couple of different scenarios over different periods of time, which may help you hone in on whether or not one option over another option makes sense. So yes, I would certainly encourage that sooner than later.
And you mentioned on the initial updated report, life safety issue about the fire barriers between the police and the garage. Is that important enough that should be taken care of now?
If you decide that you're gonna wait a while, we would probably work with administration on some things that you might wanna take on right away. Not sure if that rises to that level quite yet, but I'd have to do a little bit more digging into that.
Substantial renovation, I think the building code would come into play, but right now, if you're not changing any major improvements or moving walls around, then it meets building code now, but current building code would pass that.
And I should introduce Jake Wolensack as my project manager and architect that's been working on
I
the
was just
project.
gonna say, who are you?
He makes me do all of the microphone speaking, so.
I think we should think about that because
Yeah.
I've been in properties that I've owned in my previous job where I've had to do it. As soon as the bank owned it, we had to put up a lot of sheetrock to do that. So I'm not sure, and I'd hate to have something happen. And it's on our laps right now. So.
Yep, we can certainly advise on that as well.
And I don't know how much we're talking about. We're talking about like a wall this long, or is it just a small space, or
Wouldn't it be like a shear wall or a?
how much space are we talking about?
Yeah.
This length?
Fire stopping and just kind of seeing gaps, making sure you have that separation.
So that's not, everything is expensive, but it's not a lot of sheetrock to double it. Would you have to get 4 inches or something? Or?
Yeah. It wouldn't take a lot of money to get that done.
Okay, thank you.
So that's all I have today. We're not, obviously, we're looking more for feedback rather than any sort of action, so I would agree.
I have one question on the City Hall expansion or remodel. Was there any, and maybe I missed it, but was there any place that could be used for public and?
Or,
like,
You mean like a rental space?
yeah, like the Boy Scouts or?
I would, depending upon, so one of the biggest challenges this building has, as you're probably aware, is security for this floor. You know, the elevator, the location of the elevator and where doors are and stairs and stuff makes it difficult to secure this space away from other space. And so you just have to kind of deal with that issue. And the renovation suggests moving a large meeting space, i.e. the council chambers, to the main level. And so depending upon the design of the council chambers and how formal it is versus flexible it is, you could use that as community space as well.
Okay.
That would be my recommendation if you were interested in that, and try to keep the public out of the
Yeah,
space.
oh, definitely, yeah. I was just wondering if that was factored in. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
No, thank you for stuffing my head full.
As you think of other stuff, like I said, we'd be happy to follow up and give further information, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next item on the agenda is recreation facility study discussion.
Yes, at our previous meeting, I brought up that we'd kind of begun the process of this recreation facility study with the school district really taking the lead. I reached out to Wold Architects to kind of get an estimate, and I think at this point, they're kind of waiting to hear what the scope really of what the city council is looking for before they provide anything. I'd kind of shared kind of what our thoughts are and that how we'd spoke to them already, kind of looking at a current analysis of our facilities as well as really looking into kind of for non-school affiliated programs, looking at space availability, conditions, possible future growth, and potential costs and funding sources. I know at our last meeting, it was brought up by a couple council members, kind of wondering some along the same lines, just kind of what our current inventory is of facilities, and then kind of doing a needs analysis of what we have going, and then how we may be able to coordinate with the school. So I was bringing this back again, just to see if, after you guys now have had a couple weeks to kind of digest, what you all, I guess, are really expecting from this recreation study. And with them here, they can even answer any questions that we may have for them at this time, and can kind of give us a better idea of what costs may look like.
So has the school district reached out to them?
So the school district has reached out and has kind of answered some questions, and I think shared with them kind of how the school districts, kind of what they're looking for in this study. From what it sounds like, they're kind of looking for similar things as to I kind of first discussed, kind of where are their facilities at? Do they have enough space for their school teams and that sort of thing? And then they're kind of letting the city look for what they're looking for out of this study as well.
Be interesting is, if the school is doing one, it would be nice to be able to tag team with them.
And that's what this is. We're kind of, this is gonna, a single joint study is ultimately gonna come out of this. And I know that, I don't think it was John, but other members of Wold have kind of already started and spoken to the school about, where they're currently sitting with their teams and that sort of thing.
Cause we're running out of room. I mean, you know, if Bruce takes the water pumping and all that over there, that space across, you know, where we were thinking about soccer for a while. If he's taking that, then I don't see any open spot. There was discussion on, enough room for softball, but we got that. You know, I just don't know where you would expand any of our parks any more than what they already are.
Well, we do have 40 acres, and the thing is how to utilize that 40 acres would be my question.
And I think at this point, I want to make sure we don't put the cart in front of the horse. Right now, that is what Wold would be looking at for us. Like, what do our archery and soccer and all the non-school stuff, pickleball, what are they using now? What do they need, both in terms of space and quality of facilities, I guess I'll say. And is there an actual need looking forward in the future of that? And then what would those options look like for that?
It seems to ebb and flow, you know, just like years ago when I worked for the city. Yeah, I mean, it was nothing but softball fields. We didn't have enough softball fields. We didn't have enough this. Well, now we have enough softball fields. Now soccer is the big thing, you know. Now we don't have enough soccer.
Well, we have some, the city doesn't, but the church builds some soccer fields, right?
Yeah,
So-
if that don't turn out to be a big swimming pool.
But still, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the, you know, so what's.
So I think that tonight the discussion was outside of kind of what I outlined in the memo there on page 47. Is there something else, I guess, that the council would like Wold to take a look at, or anything they'd like to focus on in particular? I know we have already been given homework, and I think we've contacted over 20 different organizations.
Okay.
Kind of where they feel like they're currently at, in terms of, do they have the space? Are they getting that space at a time that's suitable? I know I've already heard from a couple organizations that, yeah, we have the space, but, you know, our fourth graders are having to practice at 10 o'clock at night, and is that adequate type situation? And so we've already kind of started looking a little bit at what the various teams think that they need for space and that sort of thing. But I know tonight really was, I guess, more of is there something further beyond what I've outlined in the memo that you guys would like to maybe see out of this?
I think you've incorporated the things that I asked about, in your memo. I guess a couple things that it would be, comments I would have is that, as we've talked about last time or before, is that I'm hoping that we can move the ball along on what are we gonna do with that 40 acres? Because I've heard over the years that we can't use it for the purposes that are intended. Whether that's true or not, I think we would like to have some data that either confirms or denies, or can it be used in some manner for,
Yep.
for outdoor recreation or not, because it's, because then we can either move the ball, then why are we having it? We should be selling it then. We're not in the process of developing bare land, unless we intend on using it. So, just to move that along one way or the other, I hope that this would add some data to support one way or the other on that. In more detail, as you guys just talked about, my understanding, softball's on the decline as far as outdoor recreation, and square rectangular fields are in high demand. Soccer, lacrosse, other stuff like that. So just to talk about what's the demand per sport, and talk about, is this declining in our city or isn't it? And every city's unique, so maybe we have the biggest pickleball demographic in this area or something, I don't know, but.
Yep.
Well, I know the community center, we're hot on that, adding a new sheet of ice, so that it would have been nice to have that information in there, so that when we go, we're talking to, we're gonna do some open houses, and some of the state reps and senators are gonna come in and take a look around. And, so everybody can go down there and take a look around on them open houses. But it would be nice if we had more data on the cost of what that new sheet of ice is gonna be. You know what I mean? And I kinda thought that would be in this too.
And I would imagine that part of this rec study will be, maybe it comes out that we could really use 5 basketball courts, sheet of ice, a softball wheel or softball, baseball wheel, and 6 rectangular fields. Let's just say that's what it comes out. And then I would assume that this study would also say, this is what we estimate that cost would be to do something like that. A large piecemeal, that sort of thing. And so I would imagine very similar to our facility study we're going through, it would describe what the current need is and then what the estimated cost of fulfilling that need would be. Is kind of what I see coming out of this study.
The last item I would have, and I don't know that this study can address it or even touch upon it, but it's one of those, this issue that's always out there is, what's the city's responsibility? What's the school district's responsibility? The school district involves many more municipalities than just us. And so they have a different demand or satisfaction, they have a different group of people, and their population is much greater than ours.
It's about 3 times.
Yeah, so the tax capacity and all those issues, but what level should the city feel like we should address some of these issues? To what extent, and what issues are, yeah, we see the need, but to buy or build a soccer complex for the number of students that just live in the city of New Prague doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm just saying that out loud. I'm not advocating one way or the other, but. And so that issue is something it's talked about a lot.
And that's why when we were trying to think of, well, who are we going to talk to organizations, we tried to keep it to organizations that aren't necessarily affiliated with the school. I know there were, I talked to one group that said, oh, this varsity team could use a facility with more seating. And, I wrote it down, but I also put in the notes that, that's the school district's responsibility to make sure that their varsity teams have enough seating that, and maybe it's not necessarily the city's responsibility. Now, growing up, I remember, I was a basketball player, and I remember there were a couple cities that, those particular high schools rented a larger community facility that the city just happened to own, but I don't know if that necessarily means it's the city's responsibility to make sure the basketball team has enough seating, the high school basketball team. Now, maybe it is the city's responsibility to say that we've got 7 boys youth teams and we've got 7 girls youth teams that aren't getting court time, maybe we have a few floors so that they are able to get more court time since they aren't necessarily associated with the school. I mean, I think you're right, and those are conversations that ultimately we should have maybe through and because of this study.
And I think, Bruce, to kind of piggyback on your thought, another scenario that we run into with some of the sponsored teams is that the players don't live within the city limits. So they're coming from other cities and using our space. You know, so that's a cost factor. You know, again, do we build space based on what that team needs, even though not all of the participants are within the city of New Prague?
Yeah, it's very complicated. Because on the, if you put your EDA hat on, you think, well, geez, we want to attract as many people to the community to buy gas
Right.
and all of that, but, you know, there's a balancing act that you have to take.
Same thing, I mean, we have it right now with the library system, you know, that's on the city's back as far as the building, and it's used for a big area, and.
So yeah, I mean, I would hope that through this study, we're just able to have those conversations, so we're all on the same page of the direction that's going. And I mean, similar to what we talked about, I think there's funding options all over the place. It's just a matter of getting creative if we figure out that we have a need and seeing how we can make that happen
Or if we
as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, or do something with a couple other cities that the school district encompasses, you know, and. Interesting.
Okay, well, I guess
Okay.
if you guys have any other thing else that you think of that you'd like to include in this study, please let me know. Otherwise, I guess I'll work with John and his team over at Wold to see what exactly they have for a cost estimate of putting this study together and kind of helping guide us through this piece of our facilities. So,
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
thanks, guys.
Okay, now, the public is invited to be heard on matters not on the agenda. Does anybody want to speak to the council that's not on the agenda? Not
Patrick?
seen. Patrick, you're the only one here that's. Okay, so we'll move on from there, to item number 14. Appointing the official city depositories.
Thank you. So annually, we seek your approval for the resolution that simply identifies the financial institutions that we utilize for checking, savings, investments, and that we may transfer funds between those financial institutions. So the list you'll see there is similar to what we've had in the past. Our current banks that we've established accounts and relationships with, so.
Any questions? Otherwise, I'd take a motion to approve the 2023 official depositories.
So moved.
John made the motion, is there a second?
Second.
Rick made the second, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, the next item is the 2023, oh, wait, I'm sorry, the agency agreement with MnDOT, right?
Yes, so this would be an agreement that MnDOT kind of takes the lead role on any time the city is going to receive federal funds for something.
Okay.
This is a real blanket agreement that we have entered into with MnDOT specifically on projects that we've worked in the past. And this would just kind of be a blanket agreement that would cover all that. So we'd hopefully have to do a whole lot less project-specific agreements, or they'd be shorter. And really, they just act as the holding agent for the federal money. Because I know there's different hoops that have to be jumped through, and they have people that do that all the time. So we've looked at it, and it's been looked at by both us and the city attorney's office, and they don't see any problems with this particular agreement.
Okay.
Did we get federal funds for that blinking, or did you just use that as an example?
Yes, I believe we did get, and we have a specific agreement that we signed for that particular one, that MnDOT is accepting those funds and will be funneling through them for that.
Great.
All right, I would take a motion to approve that resolution.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 23010904 for the agency agreement.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
And Bruce made the second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion, opposed, motion carries. The next resolution is approving the appointment of commissioners to the Housing and Redevelopment Authority and for the city of New Prague. So he's been the council, right?
Right, yeah.
So with that, I would take a motion to approve this resolution.
So moved.
Motion made by Sean, seconded by
Second.
Bruce. Discussion?
I think Ken was excited to talk about this, but I suppose we can move on.
Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, the next item is the 2023 appointments. Is everybody happy with what's there, or do they want to move? Otherwise, I'd take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion by Rick, seconded by Sean. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, the city council vice president.
I'll, pass the baton, Sean Ryan for vice president.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, there's been a.
Point of order, we missed 15A2, which was the city attorney.
Yes, we did.
Well, we can't go without one of them.
Can we finish this one though? Out of line?
I would say not just because of the order of the agenda.
Okay, sorry. Okay, the 2023 legal representation city attorney.
Yes, Kenny and Graven submitted their proposed rates for 2023. And generally, those rates go up anywhere from 4.3. City rates would go up 4.3 or 4.4% over the current rate. And then we'll say the pass-through rate, which would be, for some reason, if there is a development or developer review, goes up 5.6%. And that is all laid out within the agreement. I would say staff-wise, generally over the last year, I have been very pleased with the response from Kennedy and Graven. There are very few times that I cannot get a hold of Scott, and when I can't, he usually gets back to me within a couple hours when I call him. So in terms of response and customer service, I am more than pleased with the service that we get from them.
We like Scott.
Yeah.
We do. So with that, is there a motion to approve the legal attorney, the city attorney?
So moved.
Second.
Sean made the motion, Bruce seconded it. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, Rick. Now we'll
I'll pass the baton to Sean Ryan for vice president.
okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, there's been a motion by Rick, seconded by Maggie, to make Sean Ryan, the city council vice president. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay. Consulting professionals.
Yes, this is, every single year also, we have laid out kind of just more or less making sure that staff knows who we're still working with. Recently, we did kind of an interview of various engineering services, and out of that came our recommendation to continue using SEH, and this memo recommends that exact thing, that we continue using SEH as our city engineer. Specifically Chris Knutson, but I said SEH just because there are some times that Chris says, hey, this particular item is much better handled by this person in the office.
Yep.
In terms of financial advisors, I know that we've also been very happy with Baker Tilly, and we've been using them since 2009. I'd recommend we continue using them. That being said, similar to our engineering stuff, I know I've talked to Robin already that maybe this year we do kind of look out and make sure that just kind of explore see if there's other financial advisors that we may want to look at. But at 423, I'd recommend sticking with Baker Tilly, and we can kind of run that process through this year to see if there are other options going forward after this year.
Okay. Any discussion? Otherwise, I'd take a motion to approve those two consulting professionals?
Bruce has the face of the question, so I'm
Oh,
prepared.
do you?
No, I'm confused by the agenda. So we're doing consulting,
Yeah, we're right here.
city attorney.
Yes, we're on 15A4.
The computer copy just shows the council vice president is the next item.
Yeah, it's,
If
that's,
you're looking, so the agenda might have changed
the
slightly from
agenda
the last
changed.
meeting.
Yep. A little
And so
bit.
if you're looking at the agenda from the 3rd, then
Just go ahead, if you're okay.
Are we still at discussion on the engineer?
Yep.
I would like it if we knew, you know, if we took a project like, just for example, Columbus, it would have been nice to have different proposals from, engineers, to even do the feasibility study on that stuff,
Yep.
you know?
So I will say, I definitely agree that for especially large projects, you can do that. The tricky thing that I've seen some cities run into is, say, for every street project they do, they go out for proposals. There are some engineering firms that will just quit proposing, because I think there is quite a bit of work that goes into some of those proposals, and if you go out too much, some of them will be like, I'm not even gonna deal with that. And so I do think we want to be very careful about how many projects we necessarily go out for proposals for. If we were doing another $15 million project, I would say yes, like that would be one that maybe is worth going out for bid for. If we're doing a $3 million project, then that may be one that you say, okay, we've selected SEH to do this as our city engineer, and we're okay going forward. And every 5 to 10 years when we go out looking for engineers, that's kind of when we're looking for a value base for our smaller projects going forward, if that makes sense.
But with that being said, there was a proposal for a 55 and older building. And I was thinking why the city is doing the sunset stuff next summer. It'd be a good time to start thinking about that 55 and older.
Oh, in terms of doing a senior facility?
Yep, and I know that SEH at one time had a modular, Ken, you probably can, didn't they have a modular, kind of they gave us an estimate just on a modular apartment building?
I don't think SEH ever did that, no.
I've seen that in Minneapolis, they just come in and set one apartment up on
Yep,
top
so
of
I mean,
another.
so I will say that I think SEH is a huge firm and probably has an architectural division, I would assume within it, maybe they don't, I'd be surprised if they didn't though. That being said, I don't know many, firms that may piggyback, cause those would be two very different projects between doing a street improvement project and a, facility such as that. And I think, I mean, we can definitely talk as a group about, if we wanna make advances in looking into doing a senior facility, but I don't know if we'd get much, if any synergies grouping those two together. Cause whoever bids on that, one project is likely not gonna bid on the other, cause they're very different construction projects.
Did you have something, Meg?
Yeah, I think, Rick, what you're referring to might be on the Bush property over by Walgreens. There was some discussion, I think, of the owner of that property putting up an apartment building or those.
Well, no, I know that, I
Yeah.
remember that apartment building, but this was an apartment building. See, I seen a building get built like that in St. Paul, and I asked Mike about it, and he had said that there was an SEH, appraisal, or a estimate out there already for the modular apartment buildings with a city hall right in the middle.
I mean, I think we can certainly reach out if we wanna have further discussions. It sounds like that might be a different discussion, I guess, than appointing
Right.
Yep.
All right.
who's gonna be our engineering consultant, cause, yeah, you're talking more architecture at that point.
Yep. Yep. Okay, so, I would take a motion for consulting professionals.
So moved.
Thanks, Maggie, and I'll second it. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. The next item up is the appointment of the fire department officers.
It has my name on it, but I'll let Steve take it.
So as you see in front of us, this is the recommendation from our election last month. Looking to just get these officer positions approved tonight.
So move.
Okay, there's been a motion to approve by Rick. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Maggie. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, the next item is to designate the official newspaper.
Looks like Matt wants to take this one. No, state requires us to designate a local newspaper every year, and, it does not appear that the New Prague Times has any competition yet in town, so, I would once again recommend to allow Patrick to continue attending meetings.
I'll make the motion to approve the New Prague Times, the official paper.
Second.
Rick made the second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Golf course discount card proposal.
Yes, this is one that I brought up briefly last meeting, and the council asked that I bring back an official memo. Really, back in August, I think it was September, at their meeting, they, talked amongst themselves and, recommended to the city council that for 2023, all employees, full-time, part-time, seasonal, and paid on-call, would have access to a card that would be 50% of the green fee rate for a single adult golfer. When discussing this item, the board felt that this was an opportunity to not only provide benefit to the city employees, but be able to fill additional tee times that aren't currently being filled, and allow and maybe attract further golfers that would not have otherwise come to our facility. And so for them, it was important to create a card that was available to employees who actually worked at the golf course. And while there are 2 full-time city employees, the rest of the employees out there are in a seasonal nature. And so they would hope that if a discount card such as this was created, that it would be open to the seasonal employees as well.
And that's just for golf course employees or all city employees?
So it would encompass all city employees. It encompass full-time and part-time, seasonal employees such as golf course, or we have some seasonal park staff, that sort of thing. And then paid on-call firefighters would have access to that as well.
I've expressed some of the other experiences that I've had with some of these sometimes with other employees, having issues with them, but I support this, but I would wonder or think if, I would wish we could communicate it as a trial basis and then figure out some way we can keep track of how many people actually used it. I'm not understanding if they have a punch card, how we know that it's been used.
Yes, so I mean, I guess at this point, we would, on the city's level, would have to keep track of it, because anyone who purchased a punch card would have that be added to their W-2 at the end of the year, as this stuff is now federally taxable. And I guess really, if tracking how often the card is punched, I mean, I think that's something that we could also probably pretty easily track, and whoever is down there taking it, like you come in to get your punched, will keep track that Ken Ondich bought a card and used 5 of them. Or maybe we don't care that he used 5, we just care that he bought 5 cards over the course of the summer or something like that.
I think that's fine. I think, and then if it's possible that we can survey the employees to see how they felt about it after the trial period.
Yeah, we could definitely.
And if there's no issues created by it, then I really support it.
Yep, so part of the conversation with the golf board also came out of the fact that Robin and I did do an anonymous survey of the employees, kind of seeing who currently golfs out there and how much they golf, and who has memberships, that sort of thing, and would people be interested. And I think that we found, at least when surveyed anonymously, that probably, what was there, they said there were 8 people that had memberships at the time, and 30 plus people said they would be interested to highly interested if there was some sort of actual discount applied, that maybe they would golf here more, whether it's a punch card scenario or a membership. And so that was all preliminary data, but I do think you're right that we would then in the future just, is this actually being used and providing benefit not only to the golf course in terms of filling up tee times, but in terms of city employees, are people actually using it?
Yeah, and the opposite might be true, where we have low usage, but it's very valued. And that's good.
Yeah, and so, and the nice thing about this is, like I said, it is, does end up getting taxed as an income at the end of the year, but it's only taxed to those employees who actually use it. And so if I don't ever golf, I'm not gonna be taxed for a card that I'm not using.
How would that be tracked?
In terms of the taxing,
No. You bought a card, you didn't use it, so you wouldn't get taxed for it, but you bought a card
Yep.
and used it.
well, yeah, so I think the taxing comes back in the fact that you bought the card. And so if we know that I bought if I bought one card and let's say it cost $100 for the 10 punches, that $100 would just show up as income then on my tax statement, whether I used it or not. Me buying the card buys,
okay.
purchases the
Okay,
benefit.
yeah, because you had said previously, if you purchased the card but you didn't use it, then you wouldn't be taxed.
Oh, no, I meant if I didn't, if someone like, if I wasn't gonna golf this year and I didn't purchase a card, cause I know that was some confusion too. Well, if this is a benefit, I don't wanna get taxed for something I'm never
Right,
gonna
yeah.
use. And it only is taxed by those who actually use it.
Use it, or buy it.
Or buy, yeah, when I say use it, I mean purchase it.
Just curious, does this fall into social security and PERA then?
Para?
Calculations?
That would be a question we'd have to look into. I don't know if it would, cause I believe, Social Security and Para only deals with monetary income, but I'm not entirely sure. We'd have to look at
I
that.
don't believe so. It'd be an addition. So like when I worked at Hy-Vee, we would get we'd get 10% and 20% off as employees. And then that all came back. You got taxed on that, on the amount that you purchased on that. So,
No, it's just the taxes are getting taken out. You're not getting like a monetary value deposited to PERA or to PERA.
Yeah,
correct. Yeah, it's just,
Social Security.
doesn't affect that.
Correct.
Okay. So you need approval for that?
Yes.
I would make the motion to approve the 10-punch card.
I'll second.
Okay, there's been a motion by Bruce, seconded by Maggie. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries. All right, appoint members to the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee.
All right, so I have a memo where I put together a list of what we're seeking based on the recommendation of our consultant MSA for the steering committee. And they are recommending that be made of 7 to 12 people, and we met with them and they recommended that we just stick with 7 people. And that would be made up as 2 council members, so any one of the 2 of you, as well as 1 planning commissioner, and we have offered up the name from their last meeting, Brandon Pike, with Ann Gangle as an alternate as needed. Park Board member Joe Barton with Christine Wolf as alternate as needed. EDA member Brent Quast with Troy Pint as alternate as needed. From the school board or staff, they have recommended Tony Boothie, their Director of Educational Services, and then finally Shalina Sperry of the Chamber of Commerce with Brooke Stika as the alternate for that entity. So this group will meet a total of 6 times throughout the year, kind of an every other month scenario. The idea is to kick that off here in January. With a meeting lasting anywhere between 1 and 2 hours. It'd probably be a little longer as we get towards the end of their process with the comp plan consultant here. But that is the group we're recommending to really steer the direction of the plan and process. And then obviously they'll kind of be a sounding board, and there will be updates with planning commission and council and EDA and park board throughout as well, but this group would kind of be the core focus on directing that workload.
When were you thinking the meetings would be?
Again, every other month, so probably starting in January, and then the next one would probably be in March.
Yeah, I meant time-wise.
Oh, time-wise, they're generally thinking that would be best in early evening. So like maybe a 5 to 7 o'clock kind of time frame.
Right in your wheelhouse, Dwayne.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Oh, you wanna be the second one?
No.
It says 2 council members. Yeah, I'll volunteer to be on it. Does anybody else wanna be on it?
Nobody else wants it, I'll take it.
As long as we get updates on it.
Yeah, we'll
That's
have,
the biggest thing, just
the
so.
consultant, if you remember from their memo, they will have basically a monthly update that will go out to the council
Okay.
via email, in addition to these, meetings that we have here as well. And they'll also come and give, probably, I think, a quarterly update.
And then we'll,
A caveat, oh, I'm sorry.
no, but then we would have the opportunity, if we think it's going in the wrong direction, to recorrect it, okay?
And yeah, and there's will be times like open house meetings that is open to everyone, obviously, that any and all council members are certainly invited to attend.
Okay.
I have one comment for the whole thing here. Today Barb, asked me about which committees I'm on and everything. If they could be on here, it would save me a lot of headaches about missing meetings. So if my 5 or 6, committees, it'd be nice. I didn't ask her, she asked me. So I didn't want you to yell at me like you did them.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, yeah, I mean, if, I can certainly send out a list of the committees everybody's on and generally when they meet.
Just
and
a
I can
reminder.
include, cause I think we put some committees on the bottom of the agendas and whatnot, but I can send out periodic updates of these are the committees and this is when they meet, if that would be helpful for you guys.
That would be definitely helpful for me.
Okay.
Okay,
Anyway, back to this.
so now, does the second council member?
Yeah, I'll take it. Me and you will do it.
Okay. So,
I just, a couple comments. I'm not really seeing a community member involved in it. I imagine the business representation is through the Chamber of Commerce, is that how we're?
Correct, correct. So the general public input is planned to be done through the open houses and that sort of thing. We're not really looking at necessarily having that representation on the steering committee, but definitely we'll have a ton of input from the general public and other businesses as well. But this was just meant to, again, provide that guidance on a higher level.
so with Rick and I on it, I would take a motion to approve the appointment of members to the comprehensive plan steering committee.
So moved.
Second.
Maggie made the motion, Bruce seconded it. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Now, the municipal state aid street engineering services proposal.
Yep, so I'll go over that for you. We have a proposal, again, even though SCH is our city engineer, the state aid services are really a separate, task that they take care of every year for us. Very reasonable in what they're asking, from last year to this year. They are proposing no increase on the actual, routine services, which is, providing, keeping track of our account for maintenance dollars and then our construction dollars, and I have some of that information here in the packet if you want to go over that. Every other year, Chris Cavett would come to the council meeting, give an update. This was an off year because we didn't have anybody newly elected to go over that again. So we'll do that again, probably next year just as a refresher, and then 2 years after that when we have a couple of new council members on again. But the one thing they did want to note for the contract for 2023 is that they are including a $1,000 not to exceed proposed amount for system revisions, and that's basically to take care of the small portions of, in our 2023 CIP that connect to Sunrise, Sunset Avenue over to Greenway Park. We're turning those into trails, so that's getting taken off of our system. And then we have the two stubs in the industrial park, 8th Avenue and 6th Avenue. So we kind of have to do some paperwork adjusting our streets for those two areas. So that's a not to exceed $1,000 just to take care of that paperwork. But other than that, no change. And again, we do have $15,000 budgeted for state aid related work and other city engineer work, but by statute, we can actually utilize our state aid funds out of the maintenance dollars to cover that. So in theory, we're really not paying any taxpayer dollars to cover that. So just wanted to make that note again, as well as we do every year. But looking to recommend approval of their contract for MSA services for 2023 at the amount of $6,800 plus $1,000 for not to exceed adjustments.
Okay. I'm looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
It's been a motion by Sean, I'll second it. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, chief, fire chief.
Okay, so we will be having two members retire later in the year, August and October. We usually do not hire anybody until after their retirements. They've expressed that they are gonna be retiring on their date of 20 years. Classes start for these individuals in August. So we'd like to hire them now so that we can get them on the department and get them into their classes so they don't have to wait a whole year, essentially. So just looking for some approval to go to 32 members for approximately 6 to 8 months.
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thanks, it makes sense. Really makes sense.
You should have made him work for it at least, my goodness.
He's been busy plowing, give him a break.
Yeah. Okay, we're to miscellaneous. I'll go around the table. Maggie,
I don't have anything this evening.
Sean,
Nope.
I don't either. Bruce,
Well, I have a few things, so I'm gonna use up all your time.
okay.
The AEDs that we're getting, and I understand we're gonna use them or move them to other areas. But I was wondering, is there training that's provided to all staff, or is it just the police department?
The city staff does go through the training that, where there are the units in the buildings, they do have to go through the training and be certified to use those.
So all staff?
Yep.
All staff, not just the people that work in the building?
Correct.
Okay. And we provide CPR training as well
Yes.
at the same time?
Yeah, I think it's the same. Yep.
Okay. And I don't, is that usually done during the day?
Yes.
And I don't know if it's worthwhile or not, but to offer that to other commission members, other people, something to think about.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could, if that's something council wants to do. I don't know if there'd be an added cost or not, but we can certainly reach out to the various boards and commission members, and if they want to attend.
Do we do that in-house, the training?
I don't believe we do it in-house, but we have safety meetings every month, and I believe they're kind of done at those times. All get together at the fire hall and would go over something like that.
So we hire someone to do
We
the
hire
training?
a certified instructor.
Yes.
Just a thought, if any commission members in the city would have value in it or not.
Why, do you plan on using it?
Well, I would hope that other people could use it for me.
Oh.
That would be interesting.
I'd probably partake in that.
Okay, yeah, when we figure it out, I'll let you guys know
Okay.
when it's gonna happen.
And I'm already certified, so
So if he gets shaky, he just
Yep.
call you up?
I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we gotta work, we gotta.
We work well as a team.
My other comment is just hiring memos, and we had one today, but just a generic kind of question or comment regarding hiring memos to the city. At times it's, I've been involved in hiring in the past, but in the council's format, we basically just yay or nay it. And I think this memos are fairly standard and fairly good, and I appreciate the fact that you kind of go through, at least this last one, I think, a little bit of the history of how many people applied and some of that information. But I do wonder or would request possibly that that you, Josh, or the city administrator, whoever it is involved in either initialing the document, or if we standardize the document more, to show that you as our chief personnel HR person that's within our charter says you're the person that you've actually approved the hire or the recommendation for hire. And I forgot to ask today that if you approved it or not, because your name isn't on it, but
Yes, so,
as a best practice, I think we should get into that either you're initialing it or that you're concurring with it. And then secondly, I don't know if it's of value, but to me, as far as our responsibilities, is to see that our policy is being followed. And we've never audited our policy that I know of here since I've been here, but so we don't really have a method. of doing that, we could ask our annual auditor to do that once in a while, but I don't know that we need to go into that depth. But I do wonder if it wouldn't be good, whoever our HR person, Robin in this case, if she also reviews it for compliance.
Okay.
Of it. And I'm just throwing it out there. You can think about it, and I don't know what other council members feel about this, but our liability is our policy being followed. Is it in compliance with the rules and regulations? And we're following our charter, and that's why I'm kind of coming up with these things to just try to look at best practices.
Okay.
And then at times, when we're looking at, when it's not, when we don't know exactly how we get to that salary schedule, if we could maybe think, I'm not sure, think about how we can describe or detail when we vary when it's not obvious.
I guess, what do you mean by like?
Well, there's certain judgment you have to take when you bring someone on where they fit in the schedule.
Okay, yeah, you mean as to what
before.
step is being recommended?
It's
Okay.
obvious in some cases where we have a similar sized city that someone's coming from, a similar job, and we can just kind of throw it in the same kind of number of years and things. But probably just as many times as not, we have to make a subjective decision or of how that works.
Yep.
Well, if we could talk about how we write that in the memo so we have a better idea. Is this based on demonstrated knowledge that the person is, and that's why we're doing it? Is there more specific experience that puts this at step 5 than step 3?
Yep.
And oftentimes we're running into a situation, or at times, I shouldn't say often, but sometimes we're coming in a situation where a person might be getting paid higher than what our schedule would really normally fit them in. So we're making a judgment that it's in the best interest of the city to put that person here where it's not obvious that that should be there. So how do we document our memo to show that the knowledge, the training, or the experience that the person has? I know that we had a case that I thought really fit well where we moved somebody up the steps, not necessarily because they had experience in the city, but they had a lot of subcontractor experience and knowledge. And that made total sense to me why we moved them up to that step when they didn't have that kind of work experience in a number of years.
Yep.
But just to think about and work at that, and I don't know if we should, I don't know that we have in our policy really how to write that, or to, what are the criteria that we're able to vary or veer from our steps?
Okay.
I don't know if it's in detail, but to think about that.
Yeah, I think Rob and I can work on kind of really, I don't want to say templating the memo because I hate to template anything, but in a way, it is templating a little bit so everyone kind of understands why we're recommending what we're recommending. Yeah, we can work on that.
Yeah, I think, it's just because my experience, it's kind of, I don't like getting to the point where we're in a yay or nay question, then we come up with all these questions. That's challenging for the new employee to hear that happens, and we don't like having to do it either. I think last meeting we talked about compensation, just the expense for the city, where the direction is going, and some of those things. And I wondered, when our auditor's doing our report this year, they provide key ratios to us. And I just wonder if there's something that our auditor, if they have access to information that gives us a guideline how we compare in our compensation costs related to other Class 4 cities. I think a lot of these key ratios and things, they're measuring, I guess, the state, the county, and Class 4 cities. But just more touch points as we further discuss compensation and things into the future. What are more tools and information that we can have? How do we compare against other cities is something that's interesting to me, but also then charting where our compensation has gone from year to year, the specific growth of it. And I think it's good for administrators to know that, follow that information closely also. It's our biggest expense. And then, in addition to that, I would like to see, I'm not sure about other council members, how our full-time equivalents have gone or are going. We have the number of staff, but, you know, to follow what is our growth or decline in full-time equivalent employees. We have a lot of part-time, so that would be reflected in full-time equivalents. And I know last year we added more to the park staff. How did that affect our full-time equivalents and that type of thing? So we can look at a big picture. So we can better look at, what are we measuring against the size of the community or tax base or whatever?
Okay.
And I apologize for being so windy here, but this is more of a kind of a request in the packets. When we get some of these reports, like the Wold report today, it would be helpful to me if it was fully indexed. There's so much information, so much dollar numerical information, and to go back to scenario 1 to scenario 2, it's very difficult to go throughout this process and try to look at things on a computer. And even I have a touch screen, it's challenging.
That's why I had to print them off.
Yeah, I printed mine off and I forgot mine at home. So a lot of good that did. But if we can, and this is with any study or any survey that we request of anybody, and I know, I'm pretty confident you do this in any kind of planning and zoning and plating requests, you always ask for electronic copy, I think.
Correct.
So the same thing here, if Wold would give us an electronic copy that's indexed.
Yeah, in this instance, they sent us basically their PDF of their copy, but I can certainly ask them for more indexed copy too. I
Yeah.
made that note to sub-index reports.
We can index it too, I guess I'm trying to save us effort and time, but.
Yep.
But I think in any request for proposal, we would automatically ask for one electronic index copy and whatever the rest can be hard
And I mean,
copy.
it's possible that when we get a final report, because this was just a presentation slide deck, that when we get a final report, it will be all indexed out.
Yeah, and I guess I'm just using that as an example.
Yep.
There's other times where we get into a document that's whatever, 10, 15, 30 pages long. It's like, how do you get back to, when you have the physical copy, you can get there quickly, but if you're trying to do it with your finger or your mouse and trying to go back into the,
Good touch
there's,
screen.
So when you say indexed, do you mean like hyperlinks?
maybe I'm not using
Yep,
the right
so,
technology.
no,
but
I think index is correct. So on the side of your screen, if you are in Adobe,
Oh, thumbnails.
they're called, so Adobe calls them bookmarks. I think Word calls index. Basically allows you to click directly to a certain page that's been labeled. And Barb has the packet actually set up that way, that you can scroll through and click on the various items, 14C, 14D, and go right to it. But within the Wold report itself, there's only a single index to get you to the beginning. And so if it was indexed out, it would have like sub-indexes in there that you could click back and forth quickly without having to scroll. I'm assuming that's what you're talking about.
Exactly,
Okay.
yeah. Yep.
I thought the same thing.
That's, I believe, all I have. Thank you.
Just you guys printing them out, I mean, doesn't that defeat the purpose of going paperless?
Well, yeah, but if you can't,
I understand
what's
that.
on your computer, I'm printing it, this is my own cost.
And I know, I have to go like this, to read any of this. I'm really going blind, so,
You can increase the view, right?
not on mine, it's not touchscreen.
No, you can, if you go up under
That
the.
zoom portion?
Yeah. Yeah.
I just wanna know how you got a touchscreen.
When we talked about it, that's what I asked for.
The screen, it doesn't do anything right.
Yeah, I just touch it.
I just touch it.
One other item.
Yeah, go ahead.
I brought up the financial feasibility, and I don't know how we want to discuss that now, if we should start engaging with our financial person.
So,
The only reason I mention it is that it might give us, at least the beginning discussions might get us to the point where it would eliminate something.
yep, so I guess at this point, Robin is earning her paycheck. She is already engaged and is having conversations with Baker Tilly, they're emailing back and forth as we sit here, so. They're both working overtime at this point.
Now are you done?
Thank you, Robin.
Okay. I just need to know if you guys, did you need action on approving these, minutes from golf planning and utility?
We do not, those are FYIs for your reading pleasure.
Perfect, I'm done.
Okay, fire chief.
Just a reminder to the mayor and city administrator that we have our.
Now what do we have?
Just a reminder to the mayor and city administrator that we have our annual relief meeting next Tuesday at 8 o'clock. It's an open meeting if anyone else would like to get bored for 15 minutes.
At when?
Next Tuesday,
Next Tuesday, 8 o'clock.
17.
So that means that
That's the council meeting.
that's a council meeting too, so.
I don't think we have a ton on the agenda unless someone's gonna throw something at me. What time is the meeting?
8 o'clock.
I will be out of here.
Okay.
The meeting will go on with you or without you, so.
Matt,
I got nothing.
thanks for the good cleanup.
Yeah, tell you guys thanks.
Yep, they did an awesome
Excellent
job.
job.
Got a lot of compliments on it. Chief,
I don't have anything.
okay.
Thank you.
Robin,
No updates.
Ken,
Nothing more?
Josh?
Oh, settle in.
Oh.
No, so just a couple things, one big, one not so big. Just a reminder, so this year's league, legislative thing.
Oh, yeah.
Is
Oh,
on
yeah.
March 9th. I plan on going.
I'm going to.
Anyone else that would like to come is more than welcome, and, we can have a date, Rick, I guess you and I, or if other people wanna join us. But,
Yeah, just let me know, remind me.
Yep,
Because
so-
a week ahead of time, I have to call and get transportation.
okay, yep, so it'll be March 9th, and I can certainly remind you, but anyone else is interested in going,
Yeah,
we can
that's,
go up there to Capitol Hill and complain loudly for a few hours and then come back.
I grew up a block down the
Make any
street.
headway
You
with
guys
our
know that, don't
guys?
you?
They're on the wrong.
We might actually, so,
Sherburne, it
I
was,
was saying, and along those same lines,
5 or something like that.
Dwayne and I sent out a letter to all four, we have 4 of them now, 2 senators, 2 reps, just inviting them down here. And I think I would like to do it every election cycle, just invite people down every couple of years, just so we can meet them face to face, show them around, and gripe about a few things, see if they can get us money for a few other things, and then really just see what they're doing. So, once they respond, anyone else who's interested in meeting with them, I will let you guys know, and we can try to get that set up.
yeah, that's the hopes. We'll see.
Just really to be better connected with our representatives and senators. The other thing, and I sent you all an email Friday, I learned about it after the packet had gotten sent out. So, on Wednesday, there is a hearing up at the Capitol about the legalization of marijuana bill. And so at scale on Friday, a few of the mayors said that they were getting together and trying to draft a letter, kind of expressing joint feelings in one way. And initially, the conversation started, well, are we going to oppose, support, or remain neutral on the whole legalization issue? And it was quickly decided that there would be no consensus if they tried to pick that battle. But they did also have other thoughts, a couple of them being that currently in the bill it is written as complete state control. One of the most popular items that states have adopted out of the Colorado model is that there is a level of local control where cities especially can opt in as to whether they're going to allow the sale of a particular item. They can't dictate whether an item can be used, but they can dictate whether they allow for a marijuana dispensary type thing. And so it sounds like initially out of those couple mayors that were talking, they supported more of a local control model that at least allowed cities to decide whether they wanted sale or not within their communities. The other thing that they were talking about is the way it's currently written is all tax revenues from marijuana would go back to the state. And those mayors in particular felt that, you know, we would like some sort of revenue kickback because really it is the cities and counties that have to deal with any sort of potential outcomes. And so wanted to potentially write that into the letter as well, as there should be some sort of revenue sharing model so that monies come back to help with the policing and regulation of these. And so I wanted to bring this to you guys, in that they were requesting if there were other mayors or township board presidents who would be interested in also signing on to this letter. They thought that they'd have the letter as of today. As of now, I have not yet received it. So I would expect it's probably gonna end up coming out tomorrow, because that hearing is on Wednesday. But I guess as a council, do you guys have any feel on the local versus state control and or the revenues all going to the state, or having some sort of sharing model that come back to us?
I say stay neutral until the, time comes where we can place, almost like a cigarette tax. That's already being, somebody that wants to sell cigarettes have to pay for this, There's gonna be a little bit of local money for that, with that.
And again, and that was the question, because as I said, right now, the bill that at the public hearing, just states that it'll all be state control, there will be no local control over anything, and that all revenues will be going back to the state, is just currently how it's written. And so they were just wondering if there are any other cities that would be interested in signing on to supporting more local control and or a revenue sharing model.
Well, I'm happy to review the letter and then, but we would have to make a decision.
Yeah,
right
yeah, like I
away,
said,
just
yeah,
because of
they're hoping that letter can be on their desks, I'm assuming email form, obviously, by the hearing on Wednesday.
The more local control, the better for me. And obviously some revenue sharing.
And I would be geared to that too.
I certainly support the revenue sharing. I'm trying to understand how not allowing it here is something we could do constitution. The Constitution would allow us to do it.
Yeah, yeah, I mean,
it's going from land use.
So, yeah, like I said, I think it would be very much, that's just how the Colorado bill was written, is that anyone in the state can use anywhere within the state, but cities have the option as to whether they want to allow the sale of it to happen within the community. And it's
Is there another product that you would have as example of this?
I don't know if there's not currently one in Minnesota. I mean, the hope would be that the bill would be written in a way that would allow cities to opt in or out of the sale. I know what I ended up seeing was there was a good number of cities in Colorado that opted out of it, and many of them had ended up opting in within 5 years. But their taxing model is a little bit different, where many of those cities saw that they basically lost out on sales tax revenue because people were still buying elsewhere. In Minnesota, we don't have, sales tax isn't quite as strong of a driver. The city or the state ends up collecting most sales tax, and most small cities do nothing with sales tax altogether. And so there might be a slightly different feel there on how that would all play.
Well, both of our counties charge, 0.5% sales tax.
Wheelage.
I think it's just straight sales tax, though. It's not on vehicles.
I thought it was wheelage tax.
I think it's on everything now.
Transportation-related tax.
Scott County.
Yeah, so I think the sales tax, has to go back to transportation, but it is a sales tax on everything.
So if we didn't sell it, then obviously our counties, then if they bought it within the county, wouldn't be indifferent to it, but.
I sure would like that, be a bug on the wall there.
Yeah, I think all their stuff is televised. You may be able to watch it on Wednesday as to what the conversations are.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of it today. The Democrats want it, Republicans don't. But, more local control, that would be something to sign on for, but.
Well, I think we have to be careful because we are already allowing the sale of THC products. So if you start drawing the line,
Right.
that might have some consequences. As far as sales tax, I mean, anytime that we're able to get money for the sale of products within our own city limits, it's always a plus.
Okay, well, if it sounds like majority of council wishes it, and Dwayne obviously is the final signature on it, if that letter comes out, I can send it out to all the council and.
Do that and then get back to Josh, I'll sign it
Yeah, like I said, you almost, you can't make any decision outside of a city council meeting. But I guess at this point, the council could say we generally support the idea with Dwayne having the final review and signature if he wants to
Yeah,
move forward
if
with it.
that's what you wanna do.
I'm good with
I'm
that.
fine with that.
Is you fine?
Yes.
But don't get it wrong.
No, cause it's gonna be drafted by somebody else. It's gonna be kind of the,
Yeah, at this point, the city of Prior Lake is the one that's taking
the
the
initiative.
drafting initiative of the letter.
They sure like to do that.
Yeah. I was gonna say something and I'm just leaving it.
Okay, anything else?
That is all I've got.
All right, I take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second? Bruce seconded it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
All right, guys, it's been a lot of fun. Have a nice evening.
You too.